Hey coders, welcome to another exciting tutorial on my channel. This video is all about templating engine. To be more specific, we are going to learn all about a very popular PHP templating engine called Twig. But that doesn't mean you can only use Twig with PHP. Of course, you can use it with any backend language you like. However, it's very popularly used with PHP as well. Usually, templating engine is an integral part of any frameworks. But today we are going to see how to integrate a templating engine with plain PHP, that is without any framework. One of the reasons for the popularity of Twig Templating Engine is it's very user-friendly and it completely separates front-end logic from the back-end. For example, if you compare it with another popular templating engine called Blade, then even though the Blade is a templating engine, but it kind of mixes in the PHP syntax as well. So with Twig, you have clear separation between the PHP and the front-end logic. And as a result, you see a very clear, crisp, and a small set of syntax that does all the job which a templating engine is supposed to do. Now, in case you don't know what a templating engine is, let me show you why a templating engine is necessary, how does it help us, and then we will move on to installing the Twig templating engine. So first of all, let's go to the project. Okay, this is where we left our project in the previous video. We were successfully able to display the data from the index method of home controller, and these are its contents. Now, this is simply plain text. Now, suppose we want to enclose it as h1 element, then we have to go back to our home controller. This is our home controller. Okay, so this is the text we are currently seeing in the browser. Now, if we want to enclose it within the h1 elements, so we have to first of all place in h1 text and paste back the text. Now, if you notice, even though this is h1 elements, but for PHP, it's just simply a text. PHP doesn't know these are specific HTML elements. Now, suppose if our whole page is written like this as a text, it's not only cumbersome, it's difficult to maintain, and if we encounter any error, then it will be very hard to identify where that error is. So we have lots of problems there. But let's just see it in the browser for the time being. So even though the browser did recognize those h1 as HTML elements and it made this text bold and h1, but PHP did not know about it. Now, because this is simply text, so we can't use any extension that can identify these texts and autocomplete the syntax. Now, without auto-completion, today's web development is almost impossible. But with this approach, you are helpless. So this is one way PHP and HTML integrate together. The other way is, let's go to the temp file that we created. This is temp.php. Let's delete the contents. Okay, so this is, I don't know what did we have last time into this temp file, but let's place in the HTML content. So I'm using emmet. And I just wrote this exclamation mark and hit enter, and all these things got automatically placed in. So this is called auto completion. If you go with this approach, you can't use any kind of extension for this sort of auto completion. Now, even though this is HTML, but the extension is .php. Therefore, we are able to integrate or place in PHP elements within this HTML documents. So suppose let's create a variable. PHP variable. Obviously, we can't have variables in the HTML, so we have to go with the PHP. So we have to create a kind of PHP island by starting and ending tags for PHP. So in a sense, we have created a PHP island, and in between these two tags, we can write HTML code. So let's create a variable. Let's make it fruits is an array with apples, oranges, banana. Semicolon. Okay. Now within the body, let's first create a h1. This is temp page. Then let's create a paragraph and lorem 50 or 80, you're fine. So this is just text. Now we want to display this data because this is an array. So now because this is PHP data, so we have to create another PHP island, and we want to display them as unordered list. So first of all, we have to create this unordered tags. Then within those tags, we have to use for loop. But because it's PHP data, so we have to bring in the PHP island back. So, and within these brackets, we have to use for each fruits as fruit. Now, because we are using this PHP within the HTML document, so we have to make slight changes like this colon over here. Then we have to close this PHP island because now we have to bring in li, which is HTML element. So this HTML element cannot be inside the PHP tag. If we want to bring it inside the PHP tag, we have to take this approach. But if we don't want to use this approach, then this is the another approach. So list item. Now within this list item, we want to display one fruit at a time. So we have to again bring in the PHP island back. Echo fruit, semicolon. Then outside this li, another PHP island. Now within this island, we have to close for each. So and for each, semicolon. Now let's display. Okay, sorry, this is home controller. We have to go to the temp.php. Okay, so this is temp page, this is the text, and then these are the fruits that we have got. So now you can already see the combinedness. Every time we have to bring in just a tiny bit of PHP, we have to separate it from HTML by creating a PHP island. Now, if this is the approach that we are taking, it's going to take a lot of time, and time is money. So we can't waste our precious time jumping between HTML and PHP islands. So this is where the templating engine comes in handy. It clearly separates the HTML code from PHP code. So basically think of a templating engine like a document with fill in the blanks. Now those blanks are actually where the templating engine is allowing you to write anything which might be coming from PHP. But because those are blanks, so in a way, those are tiny PHP islands which are already created for us. We just have to write down the code that we want to display. So this is how a templating engine works. You will feel like you are working with plain HTML with some edit capability to display variables without creating PHP islands or any backend language islands. So once we write our front-end code using any templating engine, now comes the part which is usually called rendering. So when you hear the term rendering, it's usually used in the context of templating engine. So when you write something as a template, it needs to be rendered. And what does it mean to be rendered? So basically, behind the scenes, two steps happen. The first step is from the template that you have written, HTML with fill in the blanks. So you have written your template. Now the first step into rendering is behind the scene, it gets converted into PHP, like this code over here. So these islands automatically get created behind the scenes for us. So this is one step. The second step is from this part, the proper HTML that our browser recognizes is created and sent to the browser. So this is part 2. So rendering always happens in two parts, from template to the backend language and from backend language to the HTML. So these were the two terms that you will encounter when it comes to templating engine. I hope the concept is clear. Now we are ready to move on to the installation of the Twig templating engine. Okay, so let's go to the Twig documentation. Now if you notice over here, it says twig.symphony.com. Symphony is a very popular PHP framework and Twig is the default templating engine for that framework. Besides Symphony, I'm sure you must have heard about the Drupal CMS. So the Drupal behind the scenes also uses Twig. So if you are familiar with the Twig, you will stand out among Drupal developers because you can work directly with the syntax as well rather than just graphical user interfaces. So it's going to make you stand out there as well. In short, Twig is a big deal among PHP developers. If you want to thrive into web development related to PHP, you must know Twig. And don't worry, it's a very minimalistic language, very easy language. You won't have any trouble after today. So let's get started. So the first prerequisite for this Twig is this particular version 3.0. So 3.0 or higher requires PHP 8.1.0 to run. So let's check what PHP version we are building our project on. Let's open the terminal window, PHP-v, and our version is 8.2.12. So we are good to go. Now for the installation, this is the statement that we have to use. So write down composer, require, just write twig/twig. It will install the latest version anyway. Okay, so we have successfully installed the Twig package. Let's check our composer file, composer.json, and if you notice, we did not have this part in our composer file. Now because we have installed a dependency using composer, so this has been automatically added to the composer file. But this means we have successfully installed this dependency as well. Okay, now we are ready. Okay, now let's go back and see how to actually instantiate an object of type Twig. So the first thing is we have to use autoload, but we already have this part done in our index.php file. So this part is already done for us. Now the second step is, in order to create an instance of Twig or Twig environment, it happens in 2 steps. The first part is we need to have a loader. Now what a loader is, so basically loader needs to know where our templates are present, because then Twig will go to that place and bring out the template for us. So we have to create an object of type Twig loader, and to this we have to let it know where our templates exist. Now over here we are manually providing it's like inline template. So when the file name is index, like index.twig, but because this is inline syntax, so .twig is not present. So anyways, this index is like a file name. So when this file name is given as a template, then this should be printed in the browser. Hello is string and name is a variable. Anything enclosed within these double curly brackets, that becomes a variable. So this is a variable. Somehow later on, the value for this name will also be given to this Twig, so that name will be displayed. So anyway, this is inline syntax. Now obviously for a huge project, this is not going to help us. If this is the approach that we have to take, then why not go with basic PHP, where we are creating separate PHP island within the HTML code. So this is useless. So this is not the approach that we will take. This is the approach that practically everywhere is used. So now the loader is not a array loader, rather it's a file system loader. So basically what it means is, instead of giving it template names and what is inside those templates, you are letting it know the directory where your templates are present. So you are going to provide path to the directory where you are going to store your templates. And over here you have to provide that path to this loader. So this is the approach that we will take. For example, in our case, since we have created this views folder where we are going to place all our views, now templates and views is one and same thing. So this is where we will place all our views or all our templates. So we have to provide the path to this directory. This is what we will do over here. So once our loader is created, it knows where the directory is, where all our templates are. Then we have to create Twig environment, which simply means Twig object. So this Twig environment takes 2 parameters. The first one is loader that we just created, and the second one is an array. And over here it contains an element named cache, and over here you are giving it the path to the cache directory. Now remember, I just told you when I discussed the rendering, that rendering occurs in 2 steps. The first part is from the template to PHP and from PHP to HTML. So you need to have a cache folder with your project, because what caching does, that during rendering, when the PHP file is created out of template engine, then that PHP file gets stored in the cache. And then next time, if you try to access the same template, then first step will be skipped, because we already have our first step in our cache folder. So templating engine will first check the cache. If the associate PHP file is present in the cache, then the template engine will pick up that PHP file and convert into HTML and display that in the browser. So we are cutting our work in half. It's going to make our website faster if we have cached PHP files out of those template files already present in our folder, cached folder. Now this caching part, we don't need it for our development phase. But when our project is up and running, it's live on a server, that means we are in the production phase. So at that time, we must have a cache folder. If we don't have a cache folder, then the Twig will create problems. But in the development phase, we can skip this part. We can set this cache to false. This will tell the server that there is no caching available, and it's okay because we are in the development phase. And why we need to set this cache to false in the development phase is because we are already in the development phase. That means we will go through multiple iterations, each time changing stuff in our pages. So we might add some code, we might modify it, we might delete some code. So that means we will continuously keep changing it and keep looking it in the browser, how does it look, and then based on that look, we will again change it. So if we already have a previous version stored in the cache, then the new changes will not be visible in the browser, because our Twig will always be picking the file from the cached folder. So that's why it's important that we set the caching false in our development phase. But when we are in the production phase, we need to have cache. So you must remember that. Okay. Now let's move on. So our Twig is created. The Twig object is created. Now the Twig object is able to render any template. So to render any template, first of all, we have to let it know where that template is present. So in this case, we are telling it, so the folder name is already available to this Twig. We only need to know the name of the template, because in this directory, we will have multiple templates. So we need to know exactly which template needs to be rendered. So over here, we are saying index.html.twig. Now this is one way, and this is verbose way. The other one is just say index.twig. So we will go with this index.twig. Just like over here, it was the name of the template. So this is the name of the template, and then we are giving it data as well. So we are passing an array as a data. So it only has one element name and the value is Fabian. So we are also passing it to this template. Now this template has readily available a variable named name to be displayed in the page. So now this is the steps that we have to follow. So let's go to the project. Okay, so now within this app folder, let's create a directory or folder named services. Now within the services, let's create a file called twig service.php. It's not necessary that you create this twig service file inside the services folder, which is inside the app folder. You can create another top level folder for services as well. It's up to you. It's not hard and fast rule. Okay. Because it's a PHP file, so starting PHP code. Now, first of all, we have to create a namespace. So the app folder has been given the name, namespace name, realtor. Then we are inside the services folder. So this is the namespace. Now let's create the class Twig service. Now we are going to create this Twig service class as a singleton class. That means at a time there can only exist one instance of this Twig service class. So we are going to create one static variable which is going to be private to this as well. So private static, and let's give it the name instance. Now create another function, public function. So public but static function, public static get instance. Now this will check if this instance already exists. If this instance already exists, it will return the instance. But if it doesn't exist, then it will create a Twig instance and return that instance. So because this is private variable, that means it cannot be accessed outside this Twig service class. But this method is public, so that means anyone who wants to use this Twig service can only call this method. And using this method, you can only get the one instance of Twig service. One instance of Twig. So this is how it becomes a singleton method or singleton class. So first of all, it has to check if this instance already exists. If it doesn't, then create one. So if not, now because this is a static object, a static property, so we can't use this. We have to use self. So if not self instance, that means if this instance does not exist, it's null. In that case, create an instance. So first of all, we have to create loader. So loader is going to be new Twig loader file system loader. Twig loader file system loader, and to that we have to give the path to our views folder. This one. Now this views folder is inside the source folder, which is a top level folder. But Twig service is inside the services folder, which is inside the app folder. So first we have to jump 2 folders up, and then we have to go services and views folder. So to jump 2 folders up, we have to use directory name _ directory. This will give us current directory, but we have to go or jump 2 directories up. So command 2, and then we have to, so this is directory, yeah. Now since this will only return the directory, then we have to concatenate the rest of the path. So dots, and the rest of the path is /source/views. Okay, so this is the path to the loader. Now we are ready to create Twig object, which is basically Twig environment. So Twig equals or assign new /twig. So this backslash means from the global directory. Then environment. So new Twig environment, and the first parameter to this is loader. The second is an array, and to this we are passing cache element, and we are setting it to false because we don't want caching enabled. Okay, then the next thing is we have to give this twig object to this instance property. So next what we are going to do is we are going to say self instance assign to it this twig. Now this part will only execute if this thing returns true, and this will return true only if the self instance is empty at the moment, or undefined or null. So basically no instance has been assigned to it. Only then it will execute and it will create an instance of twig and assign it to this self instance variable. Now outside this if log, we are now able to return this instance. So return self instance. So by the time this statement executes, this self instance already has a twig instance assigned. So now we have created this object. We will run into some kind of problem, but I'll get into later. Okay, so now let's go to the home controller. This is where we want to get an object of type twig and use it to render the template. So now we have to create a protected variable over here, property over here. Let's give the name twig. So this is the local property to this home controller. Okay, now we need to have constructor method. So public function __ construct, and within this construct method we are going to assign to this twig, which is the property of home controller, the instance, this twig service instance. So for that, first of all, we have to bring in the namespace. So use namespace is realtor / services, and the class name is twig service. Now give it twig service > get instance method. So this will return us the twig instance and assign it to this variable. Now we have this twig instance. Now in the index method, what we can do is using this twig method, we can render our template. So what we are going to do is we are going to use this twig. Now this twig has a method called render. To this we have to bring in two parameters. The first one is the template name, which is inside the views folder. So the template name is home.twig. We haven't yet created, we are going to create it, but because this template is associated with home controller, so that's why we are giving it the name home.twig as well. Okay. The second part is optional if you want to pass in the data to this template. So let's bring in name and let's give it the value twig. Okay. Now let's create this home.twig. It is supposed to be created in the views folder because this is the path that we have given to the loader. So home.twig. Now create HTML skeleton code. Let's create h1 twig template for home. And over here, let's create a paragraph. And let's say hello, then emphasize. And within this env tags, let's bring in the variable. So anything that has been passed into the array as a first level argument, as a first level element, like this name. So this is not a nested element, it's the top level element of this array. So we can directly access it as a simple name variable. And to print anything on the screen using the twig template, you have to enclose it within double curly brackets. So within these double curly brackets, just write the name. So hello name and then write exclamation mark. And that's it. So to print anything in the twig, you just have to enclose the variable name within these double curly brackets. So this is it. Now let's test it out in the browser. So this is home. Let's refresh it. Nothing. Now let's inspect. So The HTML has been generated, but it's empty. Now, what could be the reason for that? I have one idea. Let's see if that is the problem. Otherwise, we will think of other reasons. So let's go back to the Twig service. Now, what we are going to do is this. Let's copy this part, echo it, and then exit. Let's see what's being printed over here. So as you can see, this is XAMPP, htdocs, realtor backend, /source and views. So over here, these are backslashes, but over here, the part that I have manually inserted has forward slashes. So we have to fix this problem. We have to make all of these backslashes turn into forward slashes. So probably this is the reason. Let's fix it and then see if that actually was the case. So I'm cutting this part, Control X, and then use another method, string replace. So basically over here we want to replace backslashes with forward slashes. So double backslash because we have to skip backslash, then we want to replace it with forward slashes, and the data or the value or the string comes from this part over here. So hopefully the problem is resolved because we had the issue with forward slashes and backslashes. Let's refresh. Oh, we are still printing the old value. So now let's copy this and paste it and see the output. Refresh. Now as you can see, we at least don't have any issue with the slashes. Now let's remove this exit and echo, and let's see, are we able to see the HTML contents now? No, nothing. So the reason was something else. Let me think about it. Oh, I just remembered. I have actually made a very silly mistake. Well, the thing is this will return us the rendered HTML code. If we want to display it on the browser, we have to echo it out, which was missing. Let's refresh, and now you can see this is the heading and hello, and this is emphasize hello Twig exclamation mark. So this is how we integrate our Twig with the vanilla PHP or plain PHP. Now we are ready to learn the very basic and very minimalistic and very easy syntax of Twig. You just have to go through it once and probably you will never forget about it. It's so simple. So let's go to the documentation and let's go through it. Just quickly go through the syntax. Okay. So this is the HTML document. Now we have already covered one part, which is if you want to display or echo out an array, any element or any variable, you have to enclose it within doubly curly brackets. So if you want to display some variable value, enclose it in doubly curly brackets. And if you want to execute any PHP equivalent statement, then you have to enclose it within these blocks. So curly bracket followed by %sign. So basically these two are the pieces of blocks that you will be using throughout your HTML as a fill in the blanks. So these are the fill in the blanks where you can keep filling in whatever you want to fill in. Now we have variables. We have already covered how to display a string. Basically we have numbers, integer or float is considered number. Then we have boolean values and iterable mapping. So in array you can iterate over array elements, sequence you can iterate over sequence, and objects you can iterate over an object as well, and you can display a simple object as well. So we will get to them later. So basically you use dot for an object property to display. Besides that, we have global variables by default available in every template. If you say self _self, it will reference the current template name. So let's just test it out. Let's go to the home.twig, and after this, the name of the Twig file is _self. So before I forget, let me just tell you quickly. You need to install a Twig extension. Just search for this Twig Language 2 extension. If you have this Twig Language 2 extension installed, things will be much easier. You basically write just a tiny piece and hit enter, and the whole block will be displayed for you, and you wouldn't need to type in anything. So you must make sure that you have this extension installed. Anyways, now let's see what does this underscore self prints in the browser. The name of the Twig file is home.twig. Okay. So besides this, we have underscore context, which references the current context. Basically, the whole template contents will be referred to us, and character set references the character says. Okay. Now variable assignment, setting variables. So far what we have got this variable, but we have received this variable through PHP's home controller. So this home controller sent this data which we are displaying in the template. But if we have our own template, so let's write set and hit enter, and because of this extension this whole block got added. So this is variable, you can give it any name over here. So let's give it name my var, and value, let's give it 15, and my variable is my underscore var. So if you have to create your own variable which only exists in the template and has not been provided by the PHP, then you are going to use this set block to define a new variable. And my variable is 15. Okay. Then we have filters. So what filters do is that they modify the output. For example, if this is the variable name, then you attach this pipe symbol and strip tags. So if any name has tags, HTML tags attached, then it will remove those tags, or you can make it a title. So title means first character of every word in the heading will be turned into uppercase. So what we are going to do is, let's use this title. So change the value, let's make it a sentence. Hello Twig, how are you? So this is our text. Now let's see, when we are printing it, let's use the filter to make it a title. Refresh, and as you can see, first character of each word has been turned into an uppercase letter. So this is what filters do, they modify the output. Filters accept arguments as well, like this list is an array, and you are printing it by joining them with comma in between them. So let's change it to, so let's create a variable, an array. So let's make it fruits equals apples, oranges, banana. Okay. So let's add a line break. Now let's display fruits without any filters. Array to string conversion online. So we are getting an error that array to string conversion is not possible. That means we can't print whole array in one go by enclosing it within curly brackets. So we have to go through the conventional method, that is array followed by square brackets and the array index or array name, or we have to iterate over it using loops. But we can use a join filter to convert it into a string by placing comma in between them. So what we can do is that we can put a pipe symbol, and then we can use the join filter, and we want to join them by enclosing comma but spaces as well. Okay, now test it out. Oh, unknown. Oh, double N. Okay, let's remove one N. Refresh, and now you can see apple space comma space oranges comma space banana. So this is how we change the output by using filters. Okay, then you can apply this filter to a whole section like this one. So if you want to apply this uppercase, if you want to convert this whole text into an uppercase, so you can enclose it into this block, and the name of the block is apply. So after apply, this is the keyword apply, then whatever filter you want to use. So you want to convert this whole text into uppercase letter, so you use uppercase. So let's use this thing, copy text. I'm copying the text to make things a bit quicker. Now let's use apply, and I just hit enter and it created this apply block. So apply and apply, but we have to give it filter. So the filter is uppercase, and let's paste in the text and let's see the output. This text becomes uppercase. So this is the idea behind filters and how you can apply a filter to a whole block. Okay, now for the concatenation, you use this tilde sign. So what we are going to do is that we already have a variable name from provided to us through PHP. Now let's create another variable, full name, and for the value, let's give it name. So value from the name, this one. Then concatenate it with, let's make it last name Smith. Line break. Now simply my full name is, then bring in full name. My full name is Twig Smith. We can put in a space in between them. Okay, this is how using this function using this function you can create a sequence from 1 to 5 and then join them by placing comma in between them. Now for the functions. So, okay, functions can be called to generate content. Functions are called by their name followed by parentheses. So the same concept that you have in any language. So over here we are iterating over, basically we are creating a range. So 0 to 3 elements and we are iterating over it and printing the element. So let's just do that. Line break. Now for item in, over here, let's call in the range function 0 -- 5, then print item. For item in range, or shall we make it I, because that's the convention, I for the index. So the syntax is for index in range blah blah blah, and then we are printing it. Value for and required. Okay, we are supposed to have a comma, not dot dot. Okay. Refresh and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So this is how you call the function. Then comes the named arguments. So named arguments, it's the same thing, but for the first and the second or any number of arguments, you give them some variable name as well. So for the first one, the name has been given low. The last one, name has been given high, and for the step, the name has been given to be step. So each time it will print odd numbers, 1, then 3, and 5. This is called named arguments. So let's move on. There's nothing. Okay. Now using named arguments make your template more explicit. Okay, fine. Control structures. Okay. So control structures control the flow of program like conditional if else, if else, and for loops. These are basically conditional, and these are defined within this curly bracket and percentage signs. So over here, this users is an object and it's being iterated over using for loop. And I think this E is for escaping. So escaping is used to avoid cross-site scripting attacks. But by default, HTML code is already scripted in the Twig. So most of the time we will not be using it. I'm sure it's explained further down, but let's ignore this for the time being. What we are going to do is that we are going to, since now we are getting into advanced concepts, so what we are going to do is that instead of modeling our this Twig template, what we are going to do is, let's go back to the home controller, and instead of sending a simple array, let's bring in a more complex array to send, which will contain different type of data on which we can try out different Twig syntaxes. So let me paste in the data that I want to send to the template. Okay, so this is an array named data. So it has at the top level an element named name, age, and then is admin is a boolean element. Current value is true. Then balance is a floating value, and then skills is another array with these elements. Profile is also an array, but it has been casted into an object so that we have an object to iterate over as well. So this approach of casting an array into object has been taken because otherwise, in order to send an object, we will have to create a PHP class, then instantiate an object of that. So why go through all that hustle when we can convert an array into object as well by casting it with this object? Okay, then we have transactions, which is again an array, but this is a 2-dimensional array because each element of this transactions array is an array itself. So we have nested arrays as well. Then we have settings. So we have all this stuff. We can try out different syntaxes on it in the Twig. Okay. So now we want to iterate over the object. So users is an array, and each element of that users array is an object. So first we are using in operator. So for each user in users, then we are just displaying user's name. So the data that we have received, we don't have. What we can do, we can convert each of these transactions into an object and iterate over them. So let's copy this and paste it over here, and over here. Now transaction is an array, but each element of this array is an object. So we are going to iterate over these transactions, and then we will be just displaying this date element, or we can display the date and amount, type, everything. Okay. So go back to home, for block for each transaction in transactions. Let's display transaction dot date. Let's just see this one's output. Refresh. Undefined array key transaction. Okay, transaction. This is plural. Okay, nothing. Guys, I'm so silly. I kept trying different things to figure out what's wrong. Turns out, even though I have created this data, but I am not sending it to the template. So the template is only receiving this name array with one element name. So let's send the data now. So hopefully now the problem is resolved. So now we are iterating over one array element at a time. Then we are only displaying this transaction's date. So each transaction is an object. So we are using dot notation. Let's refresh. And now you can see the dates. Let's put in line break. And you can see each date on next line. So if we want to display let's display the type as well. Transaction.type and another line break. So this is date, this is type deposit, date, and type is withdrawal, date, and type is withdrawal. So we can iterate over arrays using this membership with for loop, and for each property of the object, we can use this dot notation. Okay. So over here, the if statement is used if users, then we are using filter length. So this will change the value from the array to its length, whatever is the length. So if the length of this user is greater than 0, then we are using unordered list and we are displaying the users. So we can do the same over here. So let's write if statement if the condition is if transactions, then filter length. If it's greater than 0, then unordered list, and within this unordered list, let's use for loop for, let's bring in this thing, cut, delete, paste it over here. So for transaction in transactions, now we have to enclose it within list items. Control X, list item, paste. Control X, list item, and paste. So now if the transaction's length is greater than 0, only then this part will execute. Refresh, and we can see same thing, but with this bullets, because now each of them is a list item. Now, for the time being, let's comment this data out. So transaction happens to be an empty array. So now this is an empty array. Let's go to home. So if and if and nothing. Okay. Then for the comments, you can use this block, curly brackets followed by hash symbol. And inline comments, we also have inline comments for just hash. Okay. Now including template. So this is what we will be using most of the time. So let's, shall we check other things before we move on to this include tag and extends tag, because those two are the tags that we will be using a lot. But let me check if anything else we need to discuss. Okay, so by default HTML scraping is also used. So this was the filter I was talking about. E is for scraping. The default one is HTML. However, if you want to scrape it with respect to JavaScript, then you have to use this E, and then JS, provide JSS, CSS, URL or HTML attribute, whatever. So we have another one, auto escape. This will escape just only this part, this block, rest will not be auto escape. And over here, this part is just escaped with respect to JavaScript. Okay, and then we have this macros. Okay, so we have to discuss this macros as well, but let's go down, check if there is anything. We have covered string interpolation basically. Okay, so okay, we haven't covered this string interpolation. So within this text, which is enclosed within these quotation marks, if we have to insert a variable, then we will enclose that variable name with hash followed by curly brackets and the variable name. So this is called string interpolation. I'm sure we will be needing it in our project as well, so we will use it anyway. But let me just check the basic structure that the syntax that we need to be familiar with. So these are comparison operators. They are the same in any programming language: equals, not equal, less than, greater than or equal, and less than or equal. Nothing important over here. Okay, iterable has every and has some Boolean operators. So it will return true or false depending on the operator used. So for example, this is an array named sizes. So now for this one, we are applying sizes has every 38. So basically we want to check if every size over here is greater than 38. And if that's the case, return true, which will be stored over here. So we are saying sizes has every, then this is an arrow function. So we are passing one element of sizes at a time to this arrow function. And this arrow function, this is the v, the parameter that we are passing, or each element of sizes is being represented as v, such that v is greater than 38. So if every element that we pass from this array one at a time, if all of them return true, then this will contain true, otherwise it will return false. Because this has every means it has, for each element the condition should be true, that is each element should be greater than 38. But for has some is more lenient. It's checking as long as some of the elements in this size is greater than 38, then we are good to go. So this will return true because some of the elements are greater than 38. Then containment operator. So over here it's being checked if one is inside this array. So one is in the array, so returns true. If CD is in the string A, B, C, D, E, it is, so it will also return true. Then not in for negation. Starts with for the first character. So if Fabian starts with F, returns true. Ends with N, if Fabian ends with, returns true or false. So we have starts with and ends with operators as well. Then this is for regular expressions. Let's skip it. Test operator. So if name is odd, so depending on the value, so it will check the test operator. So this is called test operator. Then we will get to know them when we need them. We don't need to worry about all of these at the moment. So we have only missed three parts that we will be using extensively in our project, which is the extends block, include block, and macros. So these are the three things that are remaining to be covered. But I think the best place to discuss them is when we actually start our project. So I'm thinking either we should end our project here because those will be extensively used in our upcoming project, or shall we discuss it quickly over here? Guys, I think we should discuss those three syntactical components in the next video because we will be extensively using them and they are very integral. And to show their usage, I'll have to create more than one template file. So I think since we will be using this Twig extensively for this project, so I think we should reserve those 3 bits which are very important for the next video. So I hope you will be with me in our upcoming tutorial. In the upcoming video, we will pick up where we have left off our Realtor project as well. And there I will also show you the extends block, include block, and the macros. So I hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, please do not forget to leave a very nice comment, subscribe, comment, and share it with your friends as well. Thank you so much. Happy coding. Bye-bye.